I'm Jen Mers, Color Clean. Thanks for coming in today. I'm going to talk about 4 of my pieces and some of the techniques I use for my joint exhibition with Terrell from Lifted Spirit Photos of Hydrodynamics, the study of liquids in motion. So this piece is called Frothy. It's a 3-dimensional mixed media oil painting, 24 by 12 by 1.5. So what the process with this one was, my intention was to try to capture the continued struggle of the water brushing against the rocks, making its way down through the mountains. In this piece in particular, I was trying to focus more on the rock aspect of the water flow from the snow melt, just to bring that 3-dimensional level to try to have you feel that space, because it's very massive. So in here you can see that there's lots of buildups. I added multiple layers of sand. To get this buildup, I used a drywall compound, which worked really nicely. It stuck to the canvas very well, and I was able to manipulate it using my sculpting tools and let it dry and add more, take some off, sprinkle the sand, paint over it, do it again. So there's a lot of layers in this whole texture. But I was trying to capture, the feel of moss and then the water spray and then, it getting caught up in here, going over the rocks to get that contrast of color as well, because they don't always just go around the rocks, they go over them like you can see in Terrell's photos. We were both trying to express the water flow and the massiveness. For me too as well, it was just that chaos, and this one kind of shows more of that quickness of it all, that it's like in a blink of an eye, it just kind of will pass through the rocks and continue on its way of its massive journey down to the Atlantic and whatnot. Again, use of the drywall compound, oil pastels also, and charcoal to get more of that like rock feeling, that grittiness. This one I didn't build up as nearly as much, because it sometimes is a very subtle exchange over these rocks. It's not always quite as massive and powerful as here. So here there's not much buildup, but a little bit, and then in here you can see that there's some layers. Again, using similar tools. This one was more fingers as well because they were smaller sections. And this piece is called Apex, another 3-dimensional mixed media oil painting, 12 by 24 by 1.5. So then take a minute, this is just a mixed media, sand, oil, pastel. The intent here was to have more of an intimate setting to pay homage to our Rocky Mountains. I tried to use the use of the browns from my visit at Cameron's Peak, because instead of just using Estes Park as a reference, which is most of Terrell's photographs, but in here it was, the challenge was to emphasize the water but have the peacefulness of the rocks, because there is again still that battle of elegance and chaos. And so this was just multiple techniques of layering with palette knife work, paint brushes, sand again. You can kind of see it on these rocks. Trying to get that moss feeling as well, and like the foaminess up here I was trying to get, and then like that nice over the rock feeling that the water has. Very similar techniques in Colossal Chaos. This is also mixed media, oil pastel, sand, and oil paint, 20 by 40 by 1.5. I wanted to have like this intimate viewing of the rocks, the peace and the chaos all just kind of in one. And this half is trying to represent the water trying to make its way through and past and to continue on. So in this one, it was trying to find the balance of the peaceful and the zen, and then the massive rush of the water and chaos again. Thank you very much for listening to my talk and visiting us today. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Hello, my name is Terrell Bailey. I'm a photographer. I also go by the name of Lifted Spirit Photos, and Welcome to Hydrodynamics. As you can see, we've got a number of photos and paintings by Jen and myself, which really are concentrating on celebrating the concept of water within Colorado. I've been photographing water for a long time as a project, and so it's been nice to put together some images with her paintings. We'll start first with this one, which is kind of a setup scene to the project in general. It also happens to be the only image that was also painted by Jim. The rest of the paintings are based off of images that aren't in the show. But what I really wanted to concentrate on through this project was the motion of the water, line, shape, and form within the water. And so I did a lot of longer exposures. I actually shot handheld for all of these images, which typically I wouldn't do with a longer exposure, but I wanted to get that feeling of a softness, almost like a painterly feeling. Because I knew they'd be hanging next to paintings themselves, and I didn't want a jarring difference between the photographic images and the paintings themselves. So this one here is called Clinging to Life, and this is one of the rare images which actually is shot at a higher shutter speed. But again, you'll see a strong use of line there with the strong diagonal. Next up, we've got the portal, which probably has the most painterly feel. It was shot at the slowest shutter speed, which is about a quarter of a second. That shutter speed, typically you wouldn't shoot with a 135 millimeter lens, but the stabilization in the most recent cameras is pretty good. And there's also, as I said, that softness that comes from a little bit of motion blur from holding it that long, just handheld. Next up, I guess we'll go to the zigzag, which has been a pretty popular photo for a lot of people. Again, the use of the lines here, the zigzagging that leads the eye through the image is what really drew me to this image to include it. An interesting aspect of shooting handheld and in bursts is I really get to find among those numerous images that I took, I'm able to find the lines that are created by the blurring of the water with the longer exposure. This is something that you can't necessarily see very well when you're viewing a scene in real time. But I'm also able to capture moments such as splashes and things like that most indicate the energy and the power of the water. And so you can definitely see that in this image, the dome, which has a nice little splash coming off of the rock. I took a number of images at a number of different shutter speeds, but I found the shutter speed right around an 1/8 of a second or a 1/6 of a second to be the speed that I felt showed the motion within the water. The way that I felt it most beneficial to showing the lines and the shapes. This one is called Gator, and it looks to me like the head of an alligator, but really shows the form and the relationship of the numerous objects and the subjects within the image, while once again showing almost a misty quality to the water with the slower shutter speed. So I think that's about it. I would like to thank you for listening in and coming on this virtual tour with me, and I certainly hope you enjoyed it. So thanks very much.